Hello and welcome to our Leadership Connection webinar series. Today we are addressing a very relevant topic on leadership presence. What an honor to be here. My name is Dr. Jesus San Pedro. I'm the program director and assistant professor for the Master of Arts in Leadership program here at MACU at Mid-America. I have the opportunity to serve in the School of Business Leadership. And here I am in our campus, in my office in Oklahoma City, and I'm passionately serving in trying to connect relevant topics with highly capable faculty and friends and speakers from around the world that will add value to our careers, and also joining with students both from the graduate and undergraduate level. And we want to basically help everyone that joins to thrive in their careers, to grow as leaders, and to leverage their God-given potential and calling in their lives and in their leadership. Today, I have the honor to be a co-host together with Dr. Kelly Resemy, who is a program director and an associate professor in the MBA program here at the university. And on behalf of the university and on behalf of the authorities of our school, the School of Business Leadership, we welcome you to our new edition of this Leadership Connection webinar series. And thanks for being with us here. And I wanted to hand it over to Dr. Kelly Resemy to share some highlights of our series and some other information. Welcome, Kelly.
Well, thank you, Dr. San Pedro. And it's just, this is Dr. San Pedro's project that he so graciously is allowing me to co-host with him. And our Leadership Connection is a monthly open space where local and national and international organizational leaders and guest speakers are connecting with us in our MACU community and beyond to have these transformative conversations around leadership topics. And so it's just such a privilege today to have our wonderful guests. And we want to equip our students, our faculty, staff, and other community leaders that join us on the latest and most relevant topics and share about what makes MACU leadership model unique. And I believe that is what makes it unique. We are an international community, and we want to become more and more part of the greater scene, because through this webinar series, we want to bring the world to MACU, but we also want to take MACU to the world. And so I want to just be a part of this, and I am so excited about what we're doing to connect key ministry and corporate leaders with people from around the world and different countries. And we're keeping it online because it makes it convenient. We're recording it today so we can have it on our website. And for those who are listening, I just want you to make a note on your calendar that every third Thursday of the month at noon Central Time, we will have this 1 hour conversation with a speaker who is going to bring value into your life. It's interactive and dynamic. We'll have time at the end for questions, and this is your space, and we want to just have you get the most out of it. So if you stay till the end, you'll be eligible to participate in those questions and conversation and potentially win a special gift. Back to you, Dr. San Pedro.
Yes, and thanks, Kelly. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that we not only get to hear from the speaker, but we get to interact, and that's the purpose of this all. That's what I want to mention in advance, that after our guest speaker shares what he brought for us today, we're gonna share an open mic for people to just share questions or interact as we share this time together. I want to just, before I introduce the topic and the speaker, to share that we in MACU, in Mid-America Christian University, our mission is related to the idea of connecting people with a purpose. Actually, our mission is to create, to collaborate, and to innovate, to solve local and global problems for the glory of God through Jesus Christ and the good of society. And we're so thrilled on how this webinar series is contributing with that initiative. So the idea of the topic today, leadership presence. Presence is somehow a communication asset. It's an outpouring of authenticity and a coaching competence, and it can be seen in so many other ways that I'm sure we're going to be exposed to today. And before we get into this, I was thinking in terms of how we, in our Masters in Leadership and MBA program, have a class called Advanced Professional Communication and Leadership Practicum. And that's one of the most impacting one for students because it equips them to not only know how to communicate and share ideas, but also on how to discuss and negotiate relevant organizational topics, but also to think about how that greater organizational communication skills are preceded by things that are related to our personal realities. And we should first embody certain things. And I'm sure today we're going to learn some of that in this presentation. That's why presence is so important. And the topic of today is called leadership presence, how it can make you a rock star. And we're going to learn the 3 unique aspects to the leadership executive presence model, which is character, substance, and style. And we're going to understand how leadership presence has a distinct impact on your vibe, and that feelings that either attract or repel people, and how your vibe attracts your tribe, right? And we're going to also be able to differentiate how good leaders get people to listen and great leaders inspire others to act. So without further detail, I want to introduce you to Dr. Emmanuel Dalavai. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Dalavai. He's a seasoned HR professional with more than 20 years of experience in different Fortune 100 firms, global companies such as Boeing and AT&T, among some others. And he is currently president of EVD Enterprises, Live Out Loud Coaching, and he's an adjunct professor at the University of Dallas. He is an expert and licensed in using many of the assessment tools that can help leaders grow, like the Hogan, the MBTI, and there's one that, of course, called my attention, that is the Executive Presence Index. And I would love to hear more about that index because I'm sure we can all learn from that. The DISC is another one, Korn Ferry, many others. Besides that, he has an amazing wife, Julie, and I've had the privilege to share in a few opportunities with both of them, and something that he won't show and share in his resume, but I'm aware and know and recognize that he's a great singer as well. Worship leader and a longtime friend of mine, and he lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Welcome, Emmanuel. Thank you for being here. We're honored to have you. And the time and the mic is all yours for you to share. And at the end, remember, we're going to have 10 minutes to ask him any questions that you would like to have. Thank you, Emmanuel. Welcome.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much. And when I find the person that you introduced, I will be sure to send him your way. So thank you for that introduction. And yes, I count Dr. San Pedro as a friend, his family as dear friends as well. And if I recall correctly, not only have he and I had the privilege of doing ministry and some business together, not only in the US, but other countries where we've met, but I think I do recall that I had the very good fortune of being a backup singer to his lovely wife, who is an accomplished singer herself, way back, I think, in 2009 or 2010. So we go back many years. I am thrilled, honored, humbled to be amongst just some great leaders whether you're in academia, in the corporate world, wherever it might be. We are so glad that you are here today. I grew up just a short distance away from you all in the great state of Kansas. Even though I've been living here in Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area now for, gosh, maybe the last 26, 27 years, I will always be a Kansas boy at heart, and I will always be a Midwestern boy at heart. And people always ask me, well, have you lived there long enough to be a Texan? I say, no, I will always be a Kansas boy at heart from the Sunflower State. Went to undergrad at the University of Kansas. Just a couple of things you might want to know about me aside from what Dr. San Pedro shared, and that is I am a graduate of the University of Kansas. I mentioned that because we are a basketball school. I love my Jayhawks. We actually won the national championship this year. I was there in New Orleans celebrating. So for all of you Jayhawk fans and about college basketball fans, welcome to you all. And if you're not a Jayhawk fan, that's okay too. But I will just say Rock Chalk Jayhawk for my Jayhawk Nation and friends. Aside from that, I'm also a big Kansas City Chiefs fan as well. Huge football fan. In the spirit of transparency, I want to just offer a quick little disclaimer because I do work now for the wonderful organization of State Farm. It's an amazing organization where I serve as an executive coach, and I get to serve and train and coach some of our top leaders and executives there. And with that in mind, they always like for us to offer a brief disclaimer, and that is that anything I share today may not reflect the exact sentiments of my organization. So I want to get that little piece of business out of the way. So without any further ado, let me just share my screen with you if that is okay. And hopefully this will just give me a thumbs up to those of you who can see me if you can see my screen or presentation. Can you all see that? Okay, very good. Okay, so my presentation today is entitled Executive Presence, How It Can Make You a Rock Star. Why did I say rock star instead of like awesome football player or awesome basketball player or awesome husband or awesome wife or awesome friend? I think all of us, I mean, look, even if you don't want to admit it on a public forum like this, when you were a kid and you saw your favorite singer or musician in a concert, didn't you always say, I want to be that guy or I want to be that gal, right? So this presentation is about how executive presence can influence in a positive way your brand, your image, and your standing in your faith. You know, one of the things I have learned over the years from my dear late mom, my father, so many people who have served as wonderful influences to me in our faith is that we emit, whether we want to admit it or not, a positive or negative aroma to those around us. I feel like if we can take the time and invest in our leadership presence, we can actually emit a very positive aroma. And hence, what Dr. San Pedro said earlier is so true. Our vibe does attract our tribe. So why not make it a positive one? Why not allow our aroma that we emit to draw people to us rather than repel us? So that to me is one of the most important points about presence. So brief introduction. I think Jesus already mentioned some things about me, so I don't want to bore you there with too many details, but we'll talk about why executive and leadership presence is so important today. I'll give you a background on this construct, and I will also endeavor to connect leadership presence to our faith. I think it's an integral part not only of your fine institution, your university, but I think for those of us who are believers and of the like-minded faith, it is part of our calling and our duty in life too, right? What is this thing we call leadership presence? I'll go into that. I'll share with you one model that I like to use that is not only empirically sound, but is statistically reliable and statistically valid. And for those of us who like to blend art and science in our disciplines, whether we are engaged in the work of teaching others or teaching leaders or teaching our family members, right? All three very important roles in life. It is good to blend the art and the science. And then I'll share with you just from my vantage point, and I'd love for you to add to the list here in the slides, why it is beneficial from a career standpoint as well. When I look back on my 25-year career in the corporate world, spanning positions in business development, in corporate HR and training, and then now as an executive coach in 3 Fortune 50 companies. One of the things I have discovered is that those who have presence advance, and those who do not typically tend not to. So, how can we develop this thing called leadership presence? We'll talk about that here momentarily. Some things you may not know about me. Do we have any foodies here on the call? If so, I want to just share with you a couple of dishes that are my favorite. You can't have a conversation with me without talking about food, tennis, or leadership development. And so in the top left-hand corner is my favorite dish in the entire world. It's called chicken tikka masala. And then because I have spent so much time living in the wonderful country of France, the second dish you see there is actually called confit de canard. It's actually roasted duck. Favorite tennis player. I'm a big tennis player. Played tennis most of my life. Rafael Nadal. This is my lovely wife, Jesus was mentioning earlier. This is at a family wedding that we attended last summer in California, and we outfitted her in a nice Indian dress. So I thought I would share that as well. Okay, that was boring stuff. All right, let's talk about executive presence. One of the difficult aspects of talking about this construct called presence is that it's much like when you ask somebody to help with a resume, or what are the things that make a resume effective. You ask 10 different people, you're probably going to get 15 different answers. Okay. What I like about this model that I'm going to share with you today, and again, please bear in mind, it is just one model. I do not receive any remuneration or any monies from Bates as a result of me advocating this model. It is just one that, after much study over the course of many years, that I've really come to embrace. They have done the most extensive research on executive presence, and they like to define it as this: it is a special class of communicative leadership. And bear in mind, this is not just oral communication. You will find, when you look at some of the facets embedded within this model, that so much of our leadership presence is also about non-communicative facets too. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about our social awareness. It's how attuned we are to what people are saying, and then, more importantly, to what they are not saying, because it informs us on how to interact with them and navigate sometimes the complexity of business relationships. So again, it's a special class of communicative leadership encompassing the sum total of facets, resulting in a capacity to mobilize and sustain goal-directed action. I often like to say in my coaching engagements, whether I'm coaching people I've worked with, whether I'm coaching people in a faith-based organization, good leaders inspire people to listen. Great leaders can inspire them to act. There is a big difference. I've worked with and alongside a lot of leaders over the course of my 25-year career, and many of them stop at getting others to listen. What I want you to do is take that next step, which is focusing on inspiring them to take action. And there is a big difference, and we'll talk about ways to do that here momentarily. There are 3 dimensions that I want to point out to you that I think are relatively easy to remember. Jesus talked about them earlier: character, substance, and style. Your homework assignment, and I've asked Dr. San Pedro to send out the slides to you post presentation, either later today or tomorrow. Your homework is to look up these verses that I've attached to the presentation, because I think these verses align with these particular dimensions of character, substance, and style. We see many times in the Old Testament and the New Testament the importance of our words and our actions aligning. And I think that's what character is, right? So you'll see the 5 facets associated with character: authenticity, integrity, concern, restraint, and then also this thing called humility, which I think is the most important, right? Substance, equally important, all right? I've known many leaders over the course of the years who have style, who look good. They look the role of an executive, they look the role of a leader, but when they open their mouth, they lack that gravitas, they lack that substance. So, what I would encourage you all to do, if you are a person of style or of character, build that substance as well, build that credibility as well, so you can have this increased level of gravitas or being more taken more seriously, not only when it comes to your studies, but in the workplace and in your communities of worship as well, because you'll have greater resonance. So we see practical wisdom, confidence, composure, resonance, vision, etc. And then the last one, of course, is style. This one, by the way, is the one that most individuals, when they hear the term executive presence, they automatically associate it with style and they stop there. Naturally, we as human beings, we're gravitated to what people wear. So we're impressed by the dress, right? It might be a person's shoes or it might be their hairstyle. But once people open their mouth, guess what? Your style goes out the window. They want your substance to match your what? Your style. Absolutely. And they want you to be a person of character. So you can see how neatly these three dimensions of leadership presence work together in concert to make you a more wholesome leader. Okay. There are many places the Bible talks about this, but I want to just draw a spiritual corollary here to the book of Peter, First Peter, and he talks about adding to our faith virtue and to our virtue patience and some of these other things that are so important when it comes to our persona, when it comes to our presence, and it comes to our ability to attract others. So add to your character substance, add to your substance style, okay? And then you will be a more complete individual. Okay, here's a breakdown, a little bit more detail of each of the 15 facets that we're talking about. And you know, I can't not say this next sentence because as a coach, my mindset is always geared around helping others become a better version of themselves. So when you get a copy of these slides, just do the eyeball test. Most of you will probably excel in one or more areas of each category. Okay. What I'd like for you to consider doing is pick one where you do not excel, where maybe you have some data points in your life. You've done a 360. People have told you, you know, hey, here's an area where you can improve it. Maybe your emotional intelligence. It may be that you are a person who has a hard time exercising restraint when you undergo stress related behaviors or stress related environments. How can you work on um, exhibiting greater composure, for instance, in the middle category of substance? Or how can you become a more confident person? Um, and then, of course, style as well, right? Demeanor, intentionality, involving and empowering others, and assertiveness or being vocal and constructive. All of these work together in concert to make you a more complete leader. Typically, what happens and what I've seen over the course of time in my career is that when we are young, we know everything. We don't need help, right? I can teach you how to do this. And then gradually, as we come older, we realize, oh gosh, if I knew then what I know now, I would be a much better fill in the blank, right? That goes for all of us. I was the same way. I thought I knew everything when I graduated with my executive MBA before the time I turned 30. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I know nothing, zero, right? And thankfully, I've had wonderful mentors, coaches, guides along the way, some of them the best ones in my own family, who have inspired me to learn more about not only my strengths and how to deploy these strengths in a more meaningful way, not only in the workplace, but outside the workplace, but also focusing on my areas of opportunity, or what I call OFIs, or opportunities for improvement. And guess what? Every one of us has opportunities for improvement. And if you don't think you have opportunities for improvement, guess what? I'm going to point out one, which is humility. Okay. Which is under the category of character. So um, I'll let you read more about these when you get these slides. So background. As I mentioned already, the challenging aspect of leadership presence or executive presence is defining it, right? Many people I've polled over the years, they call it a swagger, an aura, or an it factor. In other words, what they say is, well, listen, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I know it when I see it. Well, that doesn't help a person when you tell them, I don't know how to articulate it, but I know it when I see it. I can't coach a person to get better if they don't know it when they can't see it. So the reason I like this particular leadership model, because it leans on both the art and the science. There's a high degree of correlative value to these facets, right? There's a high degree of statistical reliability and validity for those of us who pay attention to the statistical science. So what have the science and empirical analysis taught us? They have taught us that when we can look at the anecdotal evidence, when we do things called 360s in the workplace, when we ask people to provide feedback on our performance, those who report to us, those who are our peers, those who are our leaders, our supervisors, right? We get a more complete picture of who we are, and then we can use psychometric assessments. We can use executive assessments like this tool, the XPI, to give us accurate and telling answers that can guide our thinking, that can guide our actions, and help us again to become more complete rather than unidimensional leaders in the workplace and in the marketplace in general. Okay, so here are some questions that I throw out to you all, right? Why are there so many definitions for executive presence? As I mentioned, you ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different answers or so. Can you teach presence? I believe you can. I believe you can teach emotional intelligence as well. Typically, I think most people, most scholars and practitioners alike would agree that our IQ stays pretty static over the course of our lives, okay? But our EQ, our emotional quotient, our executive presence improves over the course of time because we have this thing called experiential or practical wisdom, and that informs our decision making over the course of time. Think about the lessons that you've learned. For those of us over the age of 40, we have learned a lot of valuable lessons from our 20s, right? One of them being listen to our parents more because we end up repeating some of the same things that our parents did when we were that age or they were our age. Why is public speaking and storytelling a part of executive presence? This is something that I want to double click on here a little bit. And I want to, for those of you who are in the academic setting or maybe students or even aspiring executives, right? The art of storytelling is hugely important when it comes to drawing people to us. Stories are hugely important because they help us not only connect with others, but also because they help them make sense of our lives. When we can hear that other people are going through similar tragedies or similar triumphs or similar walks in life, they're more relatable, they're more personable. And when people get comfortable sharing their story, it resonates with others. And like I said earlier, your vibe, that vibe, that positive aroma spreads even further and it allows people to be more attracted to you and it increases your influence and increases the size of your tribe. And the last thing I'll put here is it's more than just about how you look, right? Yes, 1000%. As I mentioned earlier, style is an important component. Hey, I just spoke at one of the largest HR conferences in the country this past week in Fort Worth at the Fort Worth Convention Center. And guess what? I had one of my leaders with me from my company. I wanted to look good. He wanted to look good. We spent a good bit of time coordinating what we were going to wear because guess what? Most, if not all those people, this was the first time that they had seen us and interacted with us. And whether we want to admit it or not, that's what people normally base their blink impression on, is the physical. But then once that's done, after that 10 seconds, people want to hear that you're a person of substance. So what comes out of your mouth is extremely important. So that question there, I think, is really, really important, especially for our young people to learn, because yeah, we do care about what we look like, the positive aroma that we might emit, but we also need to match that up with substance as well, right? Okay, so what can it do for you? I've listed just a handful of things. Please add on to this list. There are probably 20, 25 things I could have listed here, but in the interest of time, I want to spare you all of those things, and I want you to do a little bit of the work yourselves as well. But it provides a common definition. If we are all speaking a different language, when it comes to this construct of presence, it makes it very confusing when I tell you as a supervisor or a leader or a teacher, you need to improve your presence. Well, what exactly do you mean? Well, I don't know, but I know it when I see it. You see how confusing that line of thinking and circular argumentation can be. Yet, that happens and has happened in organizations where I've worked in the past. We cannot detail it, yet we want to penalize someone on their performance review because they don't exhibit the right amount of this or right amount of that. When we can not only express quantitatively but qualitatively what these facets look like, and then drill down even further and share what I call indicative behaviors of each one of these facets, it becomes much easier to reshape my way of thinking, reshape my way of acting, so I exhibit more of these indicative behaviors that are in direct alignment to these facets. So if I tell somebody, I need you to express more confidence when you speak, yet I don't offer any guidance or tips or strategies on how you can be more confident during a presentation, whether it's virtual or in person, I haven't done my job. Okay. But when I can share indicative behaviors, I need you to project a more audible tone. I need you to vary your pitch. I need you to make more direct eye contact. I need you to communicate in a way that reflects nonverbal communications. So you see, I've given 4 indicative behaviors on how to improve confidence when it comes just to that singular event of giving presentations. Okay. So it could add another arrow in your leadership quiver to better influence those around you. Let's say you had the very humble goal of saying, I want to improve my executive presence or my leadership presence by 20% in the next year. Modest goal. Okay. Think how many other people you could influence in a positive way just with that 20% growth rate. Huge amount. Even if you were able to influence only a couple of people in that year, that's 2 more than you may not have done otherwise. And lastly, it can strengthen the potential impact you have on providing value to your communities of worship, in your business areas, what I call social entrepreneurship, and other circles of activity, whether it be as the president of your homeowners association, whether it be the president of a business, fraternity, or sorority, or even president of your garden club. So, whatever it is, you can exhibit and work on and flex your leadership presence so that your vibe impacts your tribe. So, from a business standpoint, here are just some of the things that executive presence has done for the companies where I have worked and some of the things I drill down on when it comes to HR metrics or people metrics in general. Number one, there is strong evidence that when we improve and work on our executive presence, it encourages behaviors that are in alignment with the company cultures. In other words, it strengthens a company's or an institution's culture. Number two, it improves organizational performance. It helps leaders manage their teams better because the likelihood is greater that direct reports will listen more intently and be in more alignment with leaders who exhibit a higher degree of presence. They have a higher degree of authenticity. They listen more actively. They're more present in conversations. For service organizations like ours, almost half of HR practitioners stated that executive presence enables better interactions between customers and employees, right? And let's face it, all of us are in service oriented businesses. Whether you're an academic institution, you're seeking to attract new people to your organization, whether you're an insurance company or an airline company or you're an entrepreneur, you are wanting people to listen to your sales pitch, right? So it also facilitates leadership development, and it has helped numerous people get promoted when not only in interviews, but in their jobs and roles themselves, they have exhibited a higher degree of confidence or assertiveness or humility or style or demeanor or all of these different facets. But again, here's what I'd like for you to zero in on. When you look at these slides later, and you look particularly for those of you who want to take on this challenge, think about the areas of opportunity that people have shared with you. And I don't care if you're 25 or you're 75. As I mentioned, we never stop growing in life. Let me say that again. We never, ever stop growing in life, or we never should stop growing in life. So if you're 25, focus on something that will help you get over the hump when it comes to graduating, when it comes to your presentations, or it comes to doing better in terms of your circle of friends and influence. And if you're a professor, think about how you can connect more readily with students, right? It's a combination of the art and science of these facets involved. So, all right. I want to pause there. Hopefully I left enough time, plenty of time, I think, for Q&A. But let me just say again, thank you for this wonderful opportunity, Dr. San Pedro, Kelly, and others. Just really, really thrilled to be amongst you all. And I'm happy to just open it up now for any questions that you might have. Please feel free also to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want to email me, my email address is here. And if you'd like to visit my website to read more of the articles I've written from an HR perspective or even from an academic perspective, I share many of those on my website, drebd.com, but would be happy to hear from you. And now I turn it back over to Dr. San Pedro, if you want to just open it up for Q&A, my friend.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. What a great presentation. And not only that, but I think everybody is now excited about digging deeper into this topic and seeing the fuller perspective of this. I think many great things already happened and are about to happen as we dig deeper. Everybody just feel free to use the Q&A section and to share some questions. We have the first one coming in from Ashley Gotcher. When have you found the best time and format to give someone behavioral feedback? That's a great question based on what you were saying, which, by the way, I wrote it down here, how powerful it is to not only tell people what to do, but also coach them or be there to provide some specifics on the behaviors that should be worked. So when have you found that to be the best time and format to give someone behavioral feedback?
That's a really good question. My non-serious answer is after they've had a cup of coffee. Okay, so but my more serious answer is I think it should be in alignment with when they want it. You know, oftentimes as leaders, I've seen when they have entered into perilous waters or difficult waters is when they just go ahead and impose their will and their inclinations on their direct reports or on people who are entrusted to their care. What I've learned to do, and by the way, this was me once upon a time, so I'm speaking from experience here, right? So I don't want anybody to think like, well, it sounds like a know-it-all. No, all of these things that I share with you, let's get this out of the way. It's because I've made many mistakes. Okay, so learn from my mistakes. Is because I think what I like to do is find out when is the best time for them, right? Some people are not morning people, but oftentimes we have one-on-ones at that time, and guess what? They're already grumpy. They may be moody a little bit because they haven't only had one cup of coffee, okay? And so what I'd like to do is find out what their preferences are, find out how they like to receive feedback as well, right? And typically I would advocate for, because we are in a virtual world, I would advocate providing feedback when you can see a person face to face. It doesn't have to be in person, but even if it's via video, I think that's super important, right? Because you can see their nonverbal communication, and sprinkle in a good bit of tact and diplomacy. Okay. When I provide feedback to a leader, many reach out to me. Many of our executives at our company reach out to me because I've built a great relationship with them. There's that trust factor, right? There are things that you can do to build trust. And once you build trust, it's much easier to be candid and direct and share feedback that's tough to hear sometimes. But here's one other tip that I will just share, and then I'll turn it back over to you. That is that typically when I have asked someone, hey, what did you think you did well? It gets them on your side. It gets them talking about something positive. And everyone typically has done something positive, you know, when they've made a presentation or they've turned into deliverable or whatever it is, right? And then I'll ask them for permission. I'll say, do you mind if I share some feedback with you? Or do you mind if I share something that could help your performance be even better, right? See how that has just implicitly some tact and diplomacy there, instead of just saying, hey, I can't believe you screwed up on this presentation. I can't believe you missed out on this very important point, and you would have, if you would have done it, you would have actually gotten an A, or you would have done better or made our team look better. Well, that's a little salty, okay? Be sure that we sprinkle right, a little bit more grace and seasoning along with the salt, okay? So anyway, I'll pause there. Hopefully that was helpful to Ashley, whoever asked that question.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. We have some comments here. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, Dr. Lalabay. In your experience, how do leaders most often fail to establish executive presence? Is there a pattern?
Yes, yes, there are many patterns, too many for me to delineate and enumerate today, but I'll share a couple of them that stand out to me a little bit more readily than others. And again, I'm not speaking of any one organization. These are kind of more global themes that I've observed, okay? One is they tend to employ a my way or the highway approach, okay? In other words, they fail to look at things from an others centered perspective. When we look at the ministry of Jesus, for instance, in the New Testament, there were times where he was very assertive. There were times when he was even very candid and direct, but there were very, very few times where he was not others centered. He always tried to place himself in the hands and feet and minds even of his followers and sometimes his would-be followers. And it's a great lesson for us because when we think about that vibe attracts your tribe, okay? He was willing to reach out to people who were different than him. In our world today, we are looking for dimensions and qualities that seek to divide us. I would encourage everybody listening today, and even when you share this recording, for those of you who are listening, seek to find common denominators, common goals that will bring us together. Okay? Right? Let me just say that again. Seek to find common denominators that will bring us together. Our faith deserves that. Okay? So there you go.
Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Kelly, do you have any comment or question?
Yes, I had a question about the tools. You had mentioned tools that go with the Bates model. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about those tools or that tool. Is it an instrument, an assessment?
It is. It is a statistic. It is the only from my research, and unless someone else has come out with another model instrument in the last year or so, I'm not aware, but is the only statistically validated instrument on the market today on executive presence. And like I said, that's one of the reasons we use it. That's one of the reasons I use it in my own coaching practice as well, because I like things that have statistical validity and reliability as well, right? It's an important thing for us to consider as scholar practitioners. Beyond that, let me also say the XPI, which is the Executive Presence Index, it is a tool. There's obviously a fee associated with that, right, to contract with the organization, but it does give you a very detailed and comprehensive view of leadership presence. So in other words, it is not just an instrument, it is a leadership model too. And by that, I mean, I spoke earlier about the correlative value between many of the facets. So if you see some of the facets in character, for instance, they will match and be aligned to the ones that are in substance, and some in style as well, right? Many of them are what we call EQ related facets, or emotionally intelligent facets, right? Regarding concern, regarding composure, regarding restraint, for instance, and even a certain degree of humility. Many of those facets also relate to servant leadership. I think, you know, when you look at why you want to assess a person's presence, you have an answer for virtually everything, right? Is it because they want to explore servant leadership more? Is it because they want to become more emotionally intelligent? So I think that the fact that it is a leadership model is very important, and it's a 360 tool as well, right? Because oftentimes, as you all know very well, if we just are left to our own devices and we do a self-rating, of course, there is a self-rater bias. Every one of us, even though we don't want to admit it, we have a higher impression of ourselves than what is the actual truth. So I always like to tell a leader, ask your partner if you want the truth. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, great advice. And thank you for integrating your faith into this. So and we have another question, but quickly, is the Bates model Christian based?
It is not. I think their MO is, I think, a marketplace instrument, and they have no faith-based affiliation whatsoever. Yeah.
You've done a beautiful job of integrating that in. Thank you.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
And you know, one thing about that last question, Kelly, and comment, I think one of the great things here is that most Christian leaders can connect with the fact that there has to be a progression from the character building, I would say, efforts from any leader or leadership ecosystem, that it's not something that you're solid in your core, but you show it in such a way that brings coherence to your communication style, but also brings coherence to your leadership style. And at the end, I could see some connection also, Emmanuel. I don't know if you see that also, with branding. I mean, it's a matter of there has to be a coherent proposal for leadership. It's not only about your philosophy of leadership. It's not only about you having character, but that has to show up in a practical way. And I think all the things that you've shared make so much sense in that direction, in making leaders that may impact in such a way that may be sustainable and that may be coherent, and that people will connect the dots.
Yeah, before we take that next question, let me just add just a quick little comment. You will see on this particular slide that a friend of mine took a picture of me at this conference, and you will notice that very intentionally I'm wearing a pink shirt. It happens to be National Breast Cancer Awareness Month and National Cancer Awareness Month. I did that intentionally, and you know what? That's part of style, right? Is doing those kind of things intentionally. That's one of the aspects. And I can't tell you the number of people, several thousands of individuals attended this conference from all over the Midwest and country. The number of people who asked me about wearing a pink shirt or complimented me on that. And I was able to share why I did that to honor people in my family, my late mom, others who have passed away from cancer and whatever. So that's the kind of thing that you're talking about. It's that branding, that image, that when we step out like that intentionally and confidently, you never know how other people are going to respond and initiate contact with you. And that's part of your vibe, attracting your tribe. So just wanted to add that little nuance there.
Awesome. Wonderful. I think we have one more minute for a question here, Emmanuel. Someone's asked, what suggestions do you have for an executive starting a new role at a new organization? How to make that best first impression, I would say.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I have been a person who's had to assimilate into a new organization. So I'll just share some things that have been successful for me, and then even for other coachees that I've had in the past, other executives when they have entered a new role or a new department. And I think that is one of the most important things is talk less, listen more, right?
Mm.
I think the 80-20 rule applies really well in this instance, right? If you can listen 80% of the time, talk maybe 20% of the time, and pay attention to what people are saying, because it will give you the opportunity to ask more questions then in a more pointed fashion that demonstrate your substance, that you've done your homework when it comes to the organization. So that leads me to my next point, which is do your research. People want to know that you care about the organization's mission, its vision, and values. You all weren't part of this earlier, but I asked Dr. San Pedro this earlier, what are MACU's mission, vision, and values? And he clearly articulated them. And you know, that's important because they want to know that you believe in the core fundamental beliefs of that institution or that organization or that Fortune 50 company. You know, we are blessed to have probably the strongest brand in America. And I'm not saying that to brag, I'm just saying that's factual. We have done the research, okay? It is probably the strongest brand in America. And that did not happen overnight. It takes very intentional, calculated, consistent effort on all of us as employees and all of us as ambassadors of the organization. So do your homework on the organization. The third and last thing I will say, if you are aspiring to a new position in an organization, is make sure, this is probably the most important one, so don't miss this, make sure that your actions align with your words. The biggest way to lose people is if your actions do not match up with your words, because they will see you as a disingenuous person and there's much less trust than there could be. So there you go.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dalavai. We are honored to have you here. By the way, I have like 3 more questions I wanted, but we ran out of time. I was thinking in terms of how does it apply to the global profile of executives or leaders. I was thinking about the connection with confidence. I was thinking about so many things, but it's good that we remain with that expectation for more so we can do more research. And I'm sure we would love to have you here back at some point to share about any of the great topics that you address. And on behalf of MACU and all the team that is part of putting this together, this initiative, we wanted to thank you so much for your great contribution. Well, before we wrap up today's session, I wanted to share briefly about some exciting things that we are going through here at MACU. And I wanted to mention briefly on the fact that, who is organizing this? Well, we've joined hands, the master's degrees that we have here at MACU. One of them is the one that I have the privilege to be part of and to be the director for the Master of Arts in Leadership degree. And I should have to say that this thing of to become a leader that would be relevant for the needs, it's something that people cannot leave just to the journey or to the random building of skills. It has to be structured, and we provide some of that through this very short program. It's only 30 academic hours. It's a 10 6-week classes that are basically put together. It's one of the shortest programs around organizational leadership that people can go through, can be finished in 18 months. It's 100% online. And we not only have a certified program, but we have an accredited university, and we're in the process of developing new stages of, I would say, accreditation for our program, and not only for ours, but also for the MBA. I'm going to share about that immediately. But one of the great things, and I was mentioning that people through the program, take one class on communication, but we also have a new communications emphasis in the program, together with the regular ones that we've offered in the last couple of years that are business, higher education administration. We also have public administration and ministry leadership. And we offer a strong service base that supports students and the technology and everything that is included into the way we approach this servant leadership model from a global, with a global view of leadership. And it just makes the whole program exciting, and with people from all over the nation and the world being part of this, it's a community of learning and action that is really thriving, together with the Masters of Business Administration that Dr. Kelly Resamy has under her care as a program director. It's consistently ranked as one of the state's best degree programs, and it is one of the things is not only 100% offered online, but it can also be hybrid. And we're growing into that hybrid version of people wanting to be here on campus, but also sometimes wanting to have a class online because they prefer to, or they need to travel during a certain amount of time and then come back. And then, so we have those possibilities for this program. And there are also emphases or areas of specialty that people can take, such as communications, CPA accounting, managerial accounting, healthcare management, human resource, and international business. And that's one of the strongest programs in our university. We have a wide variety of backgrounds and people from different businesses and different areas of society being there. It's a wonderful learning experience to be part of that. And one of the things, of course, we as a Christian university, we're intentional in integrating faith and Christian ethics into all the high quality faculty do in their everyday things. So we are very excited about being able to share about our program, and wanted to remind you to follow us on social media, MACU, and you can also check there more on not only on the university in general, about the close to 100 degrees that are offered, but also on the specifics for both the MBA and the ML program. And here's the information for you to follow us in any of these social media accounts. And I wanted to mention briefly what we're going to be doing next month. Next month, as every month, we have a new webinar, and we have a special guest, Dr. Randy Ross. He's a best-selling author, CEO of Remarkable. Here at MACU, we follow his content, and we have included that into part of what we do every day. And he is a former chief people officer for a large regional mortgage corporation. And he founded this consulting firm called Remarkable some years ago. And he's a graduate from Baylor, has 2 advanced degrees from Southwestern, and this is going to be exciting. This is his new book, Fireproof Happiness. And we're honored to have him talking about this, how to extinguish anxiety and ignite hope. I think this is a great topic, and we're going to see great things. Make sure you register. Down here, you can see the link, how to do that. And you can not only go to that website to watch for previously, even today's recording is going to be there, but you can also check every month the new things that we're bringing to you. And honored to be here, part of these. And thank you so much for all of you that joined us today. And I will pass it as we close to Dr. Kelly Resamy.
Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for coming today and spending time with us. And we're just honored to have this space and this time where we can come together. And we want to thank everybody who's partnered with us. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, you can become part of our monthly events. Just make sure to let us know. And again, we remind you that this is recorded, and we are sharing it on our website, www.macu.edu, Leadership Connection. So at the end, fill out the feedback and participation, and you have an opportunity to win a special gift from our School of Business Leadership. And so we look forward to seeing you next month, and be sure to register. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.